Hello and welcome everyone to We'll Be Right Back, the future of hospitality. On We'll Be Right Back, we interview people from every corner of the service and hospitality industry, as well as representatives from organizations providing relief and resources as we learn how to manage and settle into this new reality after COVID-19. I am your host, Greg Tilton. I am joined today by Toure Folks, Executive Director of Turning Tables, community organizer, and of course, most importantly, a local bartender. Toure, please tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about the organizations you're with. You are just so active, man. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be on as well. So, as you said, my name is Toure. I am a New York native that moved here about 4 years ago. I started volunteering with a great organization that you may or may not know of called Liberty's Kitchen. Liberty's Kitchen's goal is learn, grow, lead. They provide services as far and wide as career services, kind of hooking people up with resources for healthcare, transportation, and then also through a job placement kind of activities called YDP, which is their youth development program. Over a period of weeks, people end up in an internship at the end of it and are kind of set up for success to enter the job market, generally in the front of the house or back of the house in restaurants. So that's kind of how I got involved with them. And as a result, I consulted with them to apply for a grant through Tales of the Cocktail. And we were successful in getting a grant and started an organization called Turning Tables, which similar in its goals to Liberty's Kitchen. The goal is all about equity. So we're trying to create a model for equitable access to career pathways. In doing so, we're advocating for diversity, visibility, inclusivity through every fabric of what we do. So we kind of try to bring as many people in the industry as possible and expose them to as many different industry people as possible and provide the young people that this year there were 7 or 8, provide them with job skills in a bar setting. So they're learning how to bartend in a bar. They're also, once a week going to internships where they're reinforcing those skills, and they have a mentor through this whole process. So they have someone that's, helping guide them through it, and amongst, the mentors they probably have at working alongside people during their day of internship. In addition, people, I can't think of anybody that hasn't come across this group this past year that isn't kind of in love with them and always asking about them. So, they adapt like a family throughout the industry, whether it be brand ambassadors or other bartenders in the industry. The love and support we got was a little bit unbelievable and overwhelming. It was great.
Now I got to ask, and this is probably a really stupid question, but as a mediocre former DJ, is Turning Tables in any way a reference to turntables?
I do like vinyl, and so I'm terrible with names. Like when I have to name cocktails, it's like the bane of my existence. I'll come up with a delicious cocktail, and they're like, "Yo, Toure, you have to come up with a name for it." And I'm like, Turning Tables was something. Harry Schneider, the former chief development officer over at Liberty's Kitchen, who's no longer with them. He and I are buddies. This was kind of our brainchild. We kind of sat over multiple drinks and kind of thought of something like this. It was his name that he came up with. Turning Tables was kind of like a name that fit perfectly. So win-win that I didn't have to come up with a name because I don't know what I would have called it.
I love it, man. Well, so now that we know a little bit more about Turning Tables, I think this episode what we talked a lot about was wanting to cover how nonprofits, how people who are being serviced by these nonprofits are affected by COVID-19. So could you talk to me a little bit about, the fact that Turning Tables is a pretty new organization and you've gotten off the ground, you seem to be having some good success now. And then suddenly it's all kind of not blown up by, but heavily impacted by the recent COVID-19 outbreak. Could you tell me a little bit about the time leading up to the shelter-in-place orders, how y'all reacted to that, and how you're kind of navigating that currently?
So leading up to the shelter-in-place order, there was some highs and lows. Like I said, we got the grant from Tales of the Cocktail last year, and we were a finalist this year. So there was a number of positive momentum going in the direction that possibly we might get it again. But also, a lot of people approached us to help make this a sustainable model. Thinking of things from helping us to get a kind of an events initiative in place so that we can bring some revenue stream in, and thinking of ways that we can partner with people and liquor brands and sponsorships so that a year from now, instead of looking towards the grant, we could be self-sustainable and, at the least just have fundraising for things that we need here and there. So there was a lot of building around that. And then although there was 100% placement at the end of the course, there were still some people that either didn't like their placement or were still looking for like the right fit and had some interviews lined up. So like I said, positive momentum, positive momentum. And then COVID hit. First thing I thought of, these were like my children. I mourn them like a parent is like sending their kids to college when as soon as they were done with turning tables, and looked for any opportunity to just be in their lives. So first thing I did was just like when we were in class, just kind of just reach out to them in a thread format for the purpose of just making sure that each person is checking in on each other, that we all have each other's information, that they're all receiving the same information. Bear in mind, like being a parent, they ignore any kind of things that you send, email, text. So I have to call them a lot and just be like, hey, did you get that text I sent you about unemployment or about that grant resource, or how are you doing with food? So at first it was kind of, I was like smartly tapping into these free meals that existed, and, where I needed to, I would buy groceries for people, but mostly just like making sure if someone was hungry, I would bring them food. And there's a lot of great initiatives out there besides the one that I work for, or the one I volunteer for now. Greater New Orleans Caring Collective, there's mutual aid, there's like a number of cultural aid, I think. There's a number of initiatives that are out there, No Hunger, NOLA, that like right off the bat, we're just making sure people that needed food got food. And I was pretty well tapped into those resources. And then next is helping people navigate unemployment. It's like tough enough. Most people are frustrated that are service industry and having to get like their unemployment. A lot of people have problems with the system. So making sure that they can navigate it as well, and making sure that they're like at least have the information and are set up to apply for any grants, and helping them navigate in areas where I can, because a lot of these opportunities are on the computer. So in some instances, I might have to help navigate on my own computer while I sit with a person on the phone. But everyone in turning tables is pretty squared, except the food insecurity thing, which Topbox and Liberty's Kitchen are in partnership with Crescent City Farmers, and we're able to provide people with a box once a week through a $25 a week donation, which is great. And I fill in the gaps if necessary. I think my biggest thing now is just like providing them with the resources like that they know, like, call your bill collectors and let them know what the situation is, so that you don't have any kind of interest, or make sure that that like your landlord can evict you right now, but like at the end of this, you might have to pay. Make sure that also like, your light bill, your light and your bills are going to be on as long as this exists, but do what you can in your power to like pay bills where you can and apply for as many like assistance, grants, and aid as you can.
Well, you talked about this a bit in our pre-call, how there are these resources and you're helping guide them through it. And part of the reason you're having to step in, aside from the fact that maybe they don't have access to a computer or reliable internet, you talked about how a lot of these people in your program are new to the restaurant and culinary industry, and how they're not tapped into the culinary and hospitality community yet. Not that they're being rejected necessarily, they're newcomers. They're not fully versed. They don't know where to look or who to talk to. Could you talk a bit about that problem and ways you've been addressing it?
Like most turning tables grads have had like a little bit of a background in hospitality, because it's a little bit more of an advanced of a class. So you do have to know somewhat, have restaurant chops. And I think the biggest thing is what I've seen is the turning tables is a part of the beverage community. So a lot of brands are doing things across the board. So like Campari, for one, Patron. There's a lot of brands that just have like programming, mental health resources, and like provide opportunities where if you guest bartend, you'll get like $200, $75 gift certificate. So people are pretty awesome in that sense. I think across the board, other areas of hospitality, I don't think those things exist as much unless through a grant. There's not like, as much like, if you're a chef, like teach me how to make this at home and I'll put something in your Venmo, unless, you're that like much of an entrepreneur, or someone gives you a platform to do so. Same thing with servers. Servers probably don't have as many opportunities to kind of do anything that's related to hospitality that they can provide a like tutorial on in the same way bartenders can. So in that sense, I recently got asked by a few people if anybody within my pool like is interested in, like a guest bartending shift, or, these opportunities where they can get like a little bit of income coming in. But like I said, you nailed it. Like it's a little bit harder coming in. You're not tapped into as much into the industry. But the way that I ran this course was a godsend because a lot of people ask about them on a regular basis. They're just like, and by name, how's that person doing? How's this person doing? We are fortunate in that respect. And I know, it takes a village. So being connected to Liberty's Kitchen has been great. I think we tackled food insecurity, but now, May 1st is coming up. So the next thing up on, if someone was not successful in applying for unemployment, just making sure that they got their rent paid or that they paid their taxes last year so they can at least get a little bit of this government stimulus, or kind of like tapping them into the ways that you can still get the stimulus without having paid your taxes. Anything I can do to help make sure that everyone's at least has like shelter. One of my former students is homeless and without a phone, so a little bit harder to keep track of that person. For the most part, most people seem to be in a good place. And
well, I guess I'd kind of like to turn to something you mentioned earlier, and I feel like this is probably going to be the real meat of what we're talking about here. Is you talked about food insecurity, uncertainty about their professional career, mental wellness, right? It's not just the employment and income, but it's also about all these other elements. I mean, how do you just take care of yourself, especially when you're already in a precarious position? Your nonprofit seems to, correct me if I'm wrong here, caters towards at risk, right? It's people who might need a leg up, and now they've got no work opportunities, as you said, less that they're not plugged in to the community and more that the beverage and more food side of things have different opportunities. So it just sounds like there's a lot to navigate, and then there's all these personal things they have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right now, a few of them are not doing so well mentally. I think in isolation. I think in that sense, I try to call on a regular basis, and a lot of the steam behind one thing I'm working on is due in part to I have my days when I don't do so well myself. So through self-care of myself, I think I can be tapping into these resources. I can help tap them into these other resources, and kind of a lot of the taboo for people of color and in general is most people do not seek mental health, and especially Black men. So a lot of what I do is just try to connect with them on a common level as much as possible. And then especially, and the women in my class, especially just making sure, one's a single mother, another one had just newly signed an apartment lease. So like I said, just helping them where I can, and just making sure that when I have conversations with them without being like, are you good? But just making sure that if they're not good, that I can put them in a position or tap them into a resource navigator that will give them at least someone to talk to or help them in that capacity.
So what are some of these resources? I mean, what are you tapping into for mental wellness for yourself, for the people you're working with?
So there's a great organization called 504 Health Net. You may or may not have seen me on bus stops throughout the city, and that's part of the 504 Health Net initiative. So they're a healthcare navigator. So they provide, at the least, help people sign up for Medicaid. Once you sign up for Medicaid, you enter the realm where you could tap into sliding scale clinicians. If you're not comfortable with one-on-one therapy at this point, there's a lot of group therapy sessions that are online, such as there's a group called Making Connections. They do a weekly check-in on Tuesdays, and there's a few weekly check-ins in group therapy that I've seen pop up. Tales of the Cocktail has one today, I think at 3:00. So you're seeing a lot more of that, and just making sure people are aware of those kind of group settings where people are just talking these things out. And that's essentially a gateway to getting one-on-one help, I think, for most people. There's also We Help NOLA. We Help NOLA, great organization as well. And they work with restaurants to give people access to clinicians within their platform, as well as a lot of wellness initiatives Magnolia, yoga, dancing grounds, just all around, all encompassing kind of mental health and wellness initiative. But they were in partnerships with restaurants. As we said, now a lot of things are kind of blurry. They were accepting donations as well to provide pre-healthcare, clinical help for people that needed it throughout this time. So there's We Help NOLA, Making Connections, 504 Health Net as a navigator, amongst other people that I know that are individual resources, which I can all email to you after this. Liberty's Kitchen on their page has an excellent list of resources that they tap their youth into that has a lot of information about all of that.
That would be great. We can put it in the show notes for everybody.
Yeah, I can send you that right away. It's it's pretty on point, I would say. My friend Jess Young put it together, and she's pretty thorough. Her and that team there is just like doing great work, and they need a lot of help as well, just to like keep the lights on and just to stay employed through all this, because we don't know, like, as it gets into July and August, like, you know, where money is coming from to like kind of keep the lights on. So I like work with them, for instance, on some things that they do like in house, and trying to like navigate trying to do that virtually as one step to try to like raise money and raise funds. There's also Cultural Aid NOLA. They do a lot of food distribution at like food pantries. There's a fair amount of restaurants that give away family meal on certain days. Like family meal, if you're not familiar and haven't been in a restaurant, is something that most people in restaurants look forward to. It's something that's not like a given, but usually in most restaurants, as a layup before you start your service, you usually are tapped into some sort of meal in some capacity. And so I think a lot of people are bridging the gap for that. So I've seen a few people put a calendar together of the different restaurants. To name a few, I know Koshan, Blue Oak, Tubes Meadery are a few that have been consistently doing it since the beginning. Some of the restaurants I have worked at in the past are doing, you know, providing this for their own staff. You know, I know Coquette is doing it for their own staff, and a number of different restaurants are doing that as well. So wherever I see those kinds of free meals, tapping into that. As far as the general public, Greater New Orleans Caring Collective serves, like yesterday, I think they delivered like up to like 800 meals across the city or something like that from Second Harvest. So it's a pretty well-oiled machine. They have their own warehouse now, I think, that got donated. So, you know, it's usually a canned produce and goods. There's a system of different neighborhood coordinators that will just kind of reach out to volunteers for anything from laundry to school meals to, you know, like this morning, one of my people in my community was like, yo, this box is great. I need some meat though. I need some meat, my man. I was like, all right, I got you. Like go to the grocery store. And then also part of that is just like, you know, I think in the beginning of this, it was a little bit chaotic and everyone had like more needs. Now things have kind of mellowed out. People have food, people have shelter in most cases. So a part of it is also just kind of like checking in with the community. Just like, you know, there's a lot of death that's happened, especially in the African American community. So I think now our next thing is also focusing on mental health there, like with a death doula, or just like, you know, these check-ins to see if they need anything are also kind of to bridge the gap to see, like, you know, a lot of them are lonely and in isolation. So sometimes I'll call, and, you know, like as they've gotten to know me more and more, just kind of stay on the phone a little bit longer, joke around with me. And so kind of like build a relationship with people and try to send the same volunteers so they have consistent people that are kind of checking in on them. So that's one thing that I've been kind of working on. And as a part of the mental health initiative with the organizations I mentioned, 504 HealthNet and, you know, We Help NOLA, I'm also working with the city and a few other clinicians and different mental health departments to create like a 4-tier, 5-tier system that includes a community check-in along with, you know, services that people can tap into that's going to be happening really soon.
That's exciting, man. Thank you so much for all the hard work. We really do appreciate it.
No doubt, no doubt.
Where do we go from here? I mean, what do you recommend to people who are listening, to be honest? I feel like I need to phrase it a little differently here because most of these conversations so far have been restaurants and different event groups, but your mission seems very focused on individuals, right? You're less focused on keeping your doors open or how to reopen thoughtfully, how to rethink your business. You're more like, how do we keep caring for the people that may fall through the cracks? I mean, what would you say to people who are maybe struggling with mental wellness right now, or maybe have food insecurity as well?
I would say the community has been really kind in an amazing way of late. And not just, I spoke specifically about at-risk communities or communities where there was food insecurity or issues with mental health and housing, but working in restaurants and bars, a lot of those people checked in on me personally. So I think it's great for the rest of the community to feel that this is just as important to do these check-ins with your favorite bartender or your favorite server or people that have impacted you in such a tremendous way, and not just by bringing food to your table. I can think of, you know, when I was a server, I got invited to weddings. I got invited to celebrations all across the board and became friends with a lot of those people. I think your goal for some people is just a job, but like me as a career hospitality person, you know, I'm invested in the people that I'm serving. And so I would hope that on the other end, people see it in the same way. They want these restaurants to come back, and they want them to come back stronger than ever. I think right now, just pay attention to these bills that are happening and how they're trying to pass through things on the fly under the disguise of other things, and focus on the bills that support small businesses. I think a lot of these grants that went out to larger businesses that didn't really need it. The small businesses still need to be supported.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that's been coming out seems to be calling a lot of the execution into question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the small businesses need help, obviously and clearly. But also I think this is a great moment for us all to kind of rethink restaurants and how we execute hospitality, and just looking to farmers, looking to not just the servers. Like, farmers are taking a huge blow right now. Just thinking of ways you can support farmers and other people surrounding hospitality, and thinking about, for instance, when this is all done, who is losing out as well? I can't get my hair cut, my barber can't cut my hair, but those people are losing out too. Those people that are essential services, but as a result of everything that's happening, you can't provide them with income. So very calculatedly thinking about how you support people and what businesses you support. There's certain businesses that I think are going to be okay, but for instance, I think a lot of Black-owned businesses might suffer. Bars that were already about to close, or not as supported as like I said, like a Coquette or a Koshan, or these visible people that have the social media to stay present in people's eyes. I think we need to go back to thinking of ways that we can make this all encompassing for everyone in the community, and how can we support everyone.
If you don't mind me kind of going down a more kind of charged question here, if it's not targeting you in any way, just you don't have to go down this road if you don't want to, so we can cut this. But I was just curious, what do you think are some of the unique challenges that Black-owned businesses are facing in the current climate?
I don't know if you read the New York Times article where Kasimu Harris, I believe his last name is. I think it's an article called Last Call. So he focused on traditional Black-owned bars and kind of their demise. Part of it is some of them want to sell, but also some of them don't have, landlords that want to keep them there or keep them in place. It's a really interesting overall topic, but a lot of Black-owned businesses in general. Someone said something very interesting the other day, which is, when people go to Black-owned businesses, when you see a Yelp, it's usually for something negative. So just trying to put positive light towards Black-owned bars will be something very helpful. But Dookie Chase, for instance, right now, which is a staple, I assume that the community is going to see that that's something that's super valid and needs to exist and needs to be here. But something like a new business like Murrow's, for instance, I'm not sure how they're navigating this. I don't know if they're doing takeout or delivery, but Munch Factory is, for instance. And so just making sure that those people are in the game as much as possible. I think Black-owned businesses have a big hurdle, but just as much as any small business, the biggest challenge is going to be having people not worked for a long period of time that are the bread and butter of people who support them. So I guess coming up with different ways to put their product out. I think a lot of people have to innovate while they're at home, so that when they open the doors, they have different systems that have adapted to what's happening, changing times. I think take a page from all these people that are adapting to what's happening. These restaurants right now that are doing things with rice and beans and doing delivery, I think their flow is that they've kind of stayed with the current of what's happening, so that when they have to reopen, there's not going to be much that they have to do. I think Black businesses have to think with that same mentality, and where they can serve their community as well.
Toure, is there anything else you want to hit? Is there any other subjects or topics we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
Sure, people are tired of
You're totally fine, man. I think this is all interesting. I mean, well, it's nice. I like this conversation a lot because while it's less we're a bar and we have issues with being able to have a value add outside of the space, you are with organizations that are helping people, again, the at-risk community, people who need help with job placement, who need help with new skills, with advancing and moving forward. And this has kind of thrown a lot of that into question and made things that it didn't necessarily create new problems. It's definitely digging up a lot of existing problems. And I think that, what I think you're focused on is how do we move intelligently? I mean, how do we, as the kind of show's tagline is, how do we chart a new path forward in the wake of COVID? How do we take these lessons? And I really kind of appreciate the breadth of what you're working on, just down to the fact that we had to push our recording back half an hour because you were out personally delivering food to people. I think that's incredible. So thank you, man. We really appreciate all you're doing.
I appreciate you for having me on, and anything I can do to help to get. The conversation doesn't stop here. There's a lot of people that are like willing to have it, and I think constructively together we can all come up with a way to transition into this new world and what's happening now. I know like a lot of things that are happening with Oyster Sunday are incredible, and I'm grateful that resource is there. I'm thinking the outlook of more of the positive than the negative on the other side of this. I think it's just Phoenix rising from a flame, so to speak.
Well, I'm sure you'll be helping all of us achieve that. So without further ado, give us those shameless plugs. Where can we find you? Where can we find Turning Tables? How can we, where you at?
You can find me at my house right now, but but generally speaking, both of the bars that I work at while we are in furlough are still, I think Galaxy right now, where I bartend, is still doing delivery, and they're also participating in Rice and Beans, so support that business for sure. Domino, as with 12 Mile, owned by Cole Newton, they're doing gift certificates and selling wine and beer and doing different things where they can to help the staff.
I don't know if you've had a chance. Literally about an hour before we started recording, I released the episode with Cole.
Oh, Cole!
It literally just came out.
Yeah, Cole is in an interesting position because he's a national figure, but he's also having to deal with like his restaurants on the local level. One more plug, I would say Liberty's Kitchen right now. Go to their website, donate. Especially in the comments, put top box, $25 provides a family with food for up to a week with fresh produce and vegetables and fruit. Also, donation to Liberty's Kitchen will help keep the lights on over there and help the staff that's been providing resources for people throughout with their jobs on the other end of this. Greater New Orleans Caring Collective, another one that I volunteer with currently, show them love so that they can keep doing things that they're doing right now. We Help NOLA, 504 HealthNet. These are all amazing, great organizations that need public support. And stay tuned, working on something that I'm not sure I'm at liberty to release yet, but it's, like I said, it's featuring around centered around a lot of mental health that we've been talking about throughout the show. So I will make sure that you are aware. You can find us on Instagram. It's Turning Tables NOLA on Instagram. Currently going to be working on the website, which should be, good to go at the end of this. But right now, it's just primarily Instagram with updates so far.
Thank you so much, Toure. This was so much fun having you on. I really look forward to talking to you more and finding out about this new project. Please share that with us when it's ready. We definitely want to get the word out.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I look forward to telling you about it. It's going to be fun. It's a lot of good stuff and a lot of things that I think will help the community. So it's going to be a win-win all around.
Well, thank you so much. You have a good one.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening to We'll Be Right Back, the future of hospitality. Each episode, we will be highlighting a different organization contributing to the relief effort here in New Orleans. This episode, we would like to highlight Chef's Brigade. Chef's Brigade is a collection of New Orleans restaurants, chefs, and servers feeding healthcare workers and first responders while financially supporting our independent restaurants, culinary talent, and service industry. To contribute to the cause and learn about this amazing initiative, head to chefsbrigadenola.org. We have a link in the show notes. Again, that's chefsbrigadenola.org. We'll Be Right Back is produced by me, Greg Tilton. My co-producers are Barry Schwartz of My House Events and Elizabeth Tilton of Oyster Sunday. Barry and Elizabeth are offering incredible resources and services during this time through their New Orleans-based businesses, as well as collecting and sharing various initiatives by other individuals and organizations. All of these are linked in the show description, so please make sure to check them out. You can follow us on Twitter for the latest updates and to let us know what's up, @RightBackNola. Please also consider leaving a review for us on whatever podcast platform you fancy. It helps us know what you think, and it helps people find the show. Our cover art was created by Eugenie McClellan. Our show's music was produced by Sarisu. We have links to their work in the show notes, so give them some love.